Hi there, I'm David, and welcome to part 5 of my series on good microphones for bad recording environments, such as the ISObox right here. I'm going to be using the same 20 sentences I usually use in the methodology. This is going to be a fairly lengthy video, so I'm not going to go into much time explaining it. What I do want to spend some time talking about is comb filtering, because it's a thing that happens a lot with shotgun microphones. Now, if you're familiar with shotgun microphones, they work in a similar way to a regular sort of hypercardioid microphone in terms of their polar pattern, but they have an additional thing that lets them be more directional. And that is the interference tube, which, for example, is the bits you see down the edge on the MKH 8060 here. Those work purely through physics by taking the sound that comes in on the side and effectively removing it from the way the audio comes in from the front to somehow reduce the amount of sensitivity. It's a bit beyond me, if I'm going to be completely honest. But if you are in smaller spaces, such as the ISObox or any really small room, small booth, comb filtering is a really kind of significant problem you can have with a shotgun microphone. And that bears some importance for the microphones I'm covering today, because there are, broadly speaking, two types of interference tubes on shotgun microphones. Most microphones have something similar to the MKH 8060, and in this case, the MKH 8060 and the CS-M1 in this video meet this, and that is where it's got an interference tube on one side and on the other, which means there is a directional impact. You know, having it this way will get a different sound to having it this way. That is both a disadvantage because it means off-axis sound sounds different depending where it's coming in, but it's also an advantage because it means you can kind of control if your smaller space is smaller in one or two particular directions. Some more modern shotgun microphones, such as the DPA 4017, A, B, or C, you know, the only difference is the MMP bit that goes on the end here, or the DPA 2017, or the MiniCMIT, those three microphones also being part of this video, they actually have interference tubes all the way around. Now, that gives them a much better off-axis response, a much more transparent one, and one that is consistent no matter which side the off-axis response is coming from. However, it means you cannot do that trick of rotating the microphone to kind of compensate for the space. I don't really do location recording, so I don't have any examples on site to show you. So instead, I have created some artificial demonstrations of what comb filtering sounds like. What you're going to see in the brief segue here is you're going to see three different frequencies of comb filtering being applied, and I've used automation, as you'll see on screen, to apply them gradually over the course of the audio. And you'll see how that has an impact on the audio. Let's have a listen to that now. To be or not to be, that is the conundrum. To be or not to be, that is the conundrum. To be or not to be, that is the conundrum. To be or not to be, that is the conundrum. Okay, so as you can see, it really impacts the sound. Now, more practically, it's not that bad. For example, I recording here have a tendency to have a bit of a dip in my EQ curve. That is caused by comb filtering. And if you are doing frequency analysis, spectral analysis on your recordings, if you see kind of a dip like that, chances are it's the result of comb filtering rather than anything odd with your microphone or anything like that. So I wanted to mention that really to keep in mind that it is something that I have noticed, that I definitely have a preference for the microphones that have side-by-side interference tubes rather than all the way around. I don't know if it's a coincidence. I don't know if it's significant to my preferences, but it is worth mentioning in case that has affected my judgment. So I am covering 5 microphones in this review. I'm covering the DPA 2017, the DPA 4017C, which I've just shown here, with a high-pass filter attached in line, the Sanken CSM1, which I'm speaking into right now, the MiniCMIT, which I don't have anymore, and the MKH 8060, which I just showed you as well. So the CSM1 and the 8060 have side interference tubes, and the others have all-around interference tubes. But beyond that, they are, broadly speaking, similar microphones in terms of frequency response, and let's have a look at those now. So, first to mention is the DPA 4017C. Without the MMPB, which is the kind of the end section that has the low cut options built in, it is very, very sensitive at the low end. So I have recorded with the Shure A15HP, the Shure high pass filter, the inline one, in order to compensate for that. And as you can see on this frequency chart, this chart shows the frequency response with the A15 HP applied. It is, compared to the other microphones in this video, flatter at the top end. I mean, it has a boost at the very high frequencies, and it doesn't have the present boost the rest of them have. In fact, the boost it does have is so high that at my age, I'm not going to be able to hear that. You know, my hearing does not go that high anymore. The Sanken CSM1 stands out a bit as well as having the most erratic frequency response. And it also has one of the most sensitive presence boosts, which kind of does tend towards sibilance a little. And then the DPA microphones, both of them, but particularly the 2017 and the MiniCMIT, have a bit of a drop-off at the top end. Again, I'm too old to hear that, honestly. They all sit in wildly different price brackets. They range from £615 or $895 for the Sanken CSM1, all the way up to £1,772 or $2,605 for the MiniCMIT, and the other 3 sit somewhere in the range, with the DPA 2017 kind of nearer to the CSM1, and the 4017C nearer to the MiniCMIT, and the 8060 in the middle. All of these microphones have similar noise floors, with one exception. The MKH 8060 has a noticeably lower noise floor, even when recording the same audio. I'll talk about that a bit more in the conclusions. All of them have similar self-noise, except for the CSM1, which has notably higher self-noise. And I suspect that the reason why the self-noise is not listed anywhere in CCIR is because the difference would be even more stark. This is a noisier microphone than you'd expect. It is a more broadband noisy microphone rather than kind of a bass-heavy noise microphone, so it cannot be dealt with just by a high-pass filter. It is the big downside of the microphone. All of them are short to a greater or lesser extent. While the CSM1 is the shortest, you can see a visual comparison of these microphones in the thumbnail for the video. Let's have a look at that now. And well, as you see, they're all a lot shorter than the ruler. And most of them were rented or temporarily owned for review purposes. I still have my hands on the 4017C, but I'm getting rid of it. But the exceptions are the Sanken CSM1, which was briefly my everyday microphone before becoming my travel microphone, and the MKH 8060, which was my everyday microphone for even longer, but has now become my workhorse for pretty much anything that requires just a microphone that will perform regardless of what's thrown at it. One last note before I show the comparisons. While I normally follow these with a comparison of what the microphones sound like post-processing, and I do have those if you look at the individual microphone reviews, this video would be too long with them, so I am not including those. So let's have a listen to the comparisons.
Cue dramatic music. 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 Or don't, we're not your mom. 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 Crunchazoids. 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 Crunchazoids.
Now,
Imagine the perfect espresso. Now, imagine the perfect espresso. Now, imagine the perfect espresso. Now, imagine the perfect espresso. Now, imagine the perfect espresso. Precision is not an option. 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 Talk to someone who gets it. 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 I don't think we should go in there. 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 I brought you a spoon. 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 Oh, it's a lovely day to be a me. Oh, it's a lovely day to be a me. Oh, it's a lovely day to be a me. Oh, it's a lovely day to be a me. Oh, it's a lovely day to be a me. I'm the best magical dog. 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 All are safe under my protection. 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 Roll up. 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 You just got mud on my shoes. 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 I was never in the shadows. 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 Client said it'd be easy. 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 I'm going to count down from 3 and then. I'm going to count down from 3 and then. I'm going to count down from 3 and then. I'm going to count down from 3 and then. I'm going to count down from 3 and then. Kill them all. 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 She sells seashells by the seashore. 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 Peter Piper picked a pack of pickled peppers. 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 They're right behind you. They're right behind you. They're right behind you. They're right behind you. They're right behind you.
Okay, so my conclusions. I find it quite hard to listen back to these now and give an unbiased opinion because, of course, I've reviewed all of these individually. So instead, I've decided that the most useful thing to give is a single pro and con for each microphone in no particular order, kind of the random order that I've come up with. So starting with the DPA 4017C. So the pro is that this is the flattest of the microphones in terms of the frequency response, especially at the bottom end when you do not put a high-pass filter in line. And that makes it particularly useful for very honest recording. And it's the only shotgun I'd really consider using for Foley, if that's your thing. It's not my thing. But on the other side of that, the con, kind of the con side of the pro, it picks up everything at the bottom end without a high-pass filter, and adding the MMP-B with the high-pass filter switches instead of the MMP-C, which I showed you earlier, it makes it significantly longer, which for me is a big negative. You know, the big downside of why I no longer have an MKH 416 is because of the length. Second microphone is the Schoeps MiniCMIT. The pro for that is that it is exceptionally transparent, it's very honest in its recording, and it has exactly the quality you'd expect from them. The con is the price, and I don't think I need to say more than that. On to the DPA 2017. The pro of that is that it pretty much gets you everything you can get from the MiniCMIT, including the almost identical frequency response, at a significantly lower price. So if you're after a MiniCMIT and you're after that level of honesty and transparency in your recording, then it's a really appealing proposition. However, it does suffer from the con that would have been the MiniCMIT's con if it wasn't for price kind of overriding it. It is, in my opinion, too honest for voiceover. Fantastic microphone if you have it on the end of a boom, especially if you're going to be doing ADR later anyway. But it is, I prefer my microphone to have a little bit of colour. Fourth microphone is the Sanken CS-M1. The pro of this is, frankly, the phenomenal size and weight and the low price for such a high quality shotgun. But the con, and the one thing that really stopped this being an absolutely unbeatable microphone that would be worth, a good 50% more, is the self-noise. The self-noise is far too high. Not just for my taste, it's just too high for a shotgun microphone, and it's a pity. I would really love to see if there's a CSM2 sometime in the future. I would love to know what that's like. And finally, the fifth microphone, the Sennheiser MKH 8060. The pro for that is that it has incredible rejection of off-axis noise, which combines with very low self-noise to have a superb and unbeatably low noise floor in my environment. I've not got a noise floor like it with any other microphone I've tried. The con is that it is not only pricier than the microphone it's arguably a successor of, the MKH 416, it's significantly pricier when you factor in the ability to get an MKH 416. And I really have my doubt that it's as much of a kind of built like a tank microphone, mainly because of my concerns, as I mentioned back in the review of it, around the thread on the XLR capsule. And that's a concern for anything in the 8000 series. So, coming up in the next video, this was the last microphone review I'll be doing in some time, although I would quite like to review my pair of Austrian Audio OC818s sometime soon, but let's see if I can fit that in. Instead, I'm moving to plugin reviews for the next 4 to 5 months at least, so I will be following up last time's DX Split review with a deep dive on one of the most critically important plugins for audiobooks, the Mouth D-Clicker. So I really hope you'll be back next time to see that video. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.